Now, in one of our previous conversations, you mentioned that theory is not really of an interest to you, nor do you think that it's useful at times for practical application in attempting to combat and change these systems of power. However, one of the more wide-ranging left intellectuals of our time, Slavoj Zizek, takes almost the exact opposite approach to his work. He draws on the work of Derrida, Lacan, and various others to illuminate his critique of global capitalism, empire ideology, and so forth. Can you talk about why you personally haven't written more books on, say, political or economic or social theory? And then what are your thoughts on Slavoj Zizek's work as with regards to how much of it you're aware of or have read or engaged with? And then his use of French psychoanalyst Lacan's work, and then, of course, any words on Derrida's work, deconstructionism and that legacy.
Well, what you're referring to is what's called theory. And the reason when I said I'm not interested in theory, what I meant is I'm not interested in posturing, using fancy terms like polysyllables and pretending to have theory when you have no theory whatsoever. So there's no theory in any of this stuff, not in the sense of theory that anyone's familiar with in the sciences or any other serious field. Try to find in all of the work you mentioned some principles from which you can deduce conclusions that yield empirically testable propositions where it all goes beyond the level of something you can explain in 5 minutes to a 12-year-old. See if you can find that when the fancy words are decoded. I can't. So I'm not interested in that kind of posturing. Zizek is an extreme example of it. I don't see anything in what he's saying. Jacques Lacan I actually knew. I kind of liked him. We have meetings every once in a while, but I thought, quite frankly, I thought he was a total charlatan. Just posturing before the television cameras in the way many Paris intellectuals do. Why this is influential, I haven't the slightest idea. I don't see anything there that should be that should be influential. So maybe you can tell me why you think there's something significant. I don't see it. So yeah, I'm not interested in that kind of theoretical posturing, which has no content.
And would you, I think it would be interesting for a lot of folks, particularly because this work has become more and more popular. I remember just hearing Zizek's name a few years ago, and then now when I go into different organizing circles, or if I go to different events or protests or rallies or so forth, assemblies, I hear his name and his work being brought up often. It seems you just recently had a conversation with Angela Davis. Vijay Prashad, of course, moderated the conversation in Boston. And I would like to see more of those conversations take place, even from, say, folks coming from different angles, people such as yourself and, say, someone as Slavoj Zizek, whose work is becoming more influential. Are those things do you think that's helpful to have those, maybe not even debates, but at least conversations with people on the left who are providing work for people who do find it influential? Do you think this is something we should think about?
Well, you say his work is becoming influential. I would question that. I think his posturing is becoming influential. Can you tell me what the work is? I can't find it. I see a lot of, he's good, he's a good actor. He makes things sound exciting, but can you find any content? I can't. So I would have no interest in having a conversation with him, and I suppose the converse is true as well, I imagine. But a discussion with Angela Davis is fine. She's an interesting person. Thinks about things, has important things to say, has done interesting things.
As a feminine model.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway,
Okay. Yeah. No, what you said about again, Academy, Chomsky, and so on. Well, with all deep respect that I do have for Chomsky, my first point is that Chomsky, who always emphasizes how one has to be empirically accurate, not just some crazy Lacanian speculations and so on, Well, I don't think I know a guy who was so often empirically wrong in his descriptions, in his whatever. Let's look. I remember when he defended this demonization of Khmer Rouge. And he wrote a couple of texts claiming, no, this is Western propaganda, Khmer Rouge are not as horrible as that. And when later he was compelled to admit that Khmer Rouge were not the nicest guys in this universe and so on, his defense was quite shocking for me. It was that, no, with the data that we had at that point, I was right. At that point, we didn't yet know enough, so, you know. But I totally reject this line of reasoning. For example, concerning Stalinism, the point is not that you have to know, you have to photo evidence of Gulag or whatever. My God, you just have to listen to the public discourse of Stalinism, of Khmer Rouge, to get it that something terrifyingly pathological is going on there. For example, Khmer Rouge, even if we have no data about their prisons and so on, isn't it, in a perverse way, almost fascinating to have a regime which, in the first 2 years, 75 to 77, behaved towards itself, treated itself as illegal? You know, the regime was nameless. It was called Angka, organization, not Communist Party of Korea, organization. Leaders were nameless. If you asked, who is my leader, your head was chopped off immediately with, and so on. So, you know what I mean? Like, he's, okay, next point about Chomsky. You know, the consequence of this attitude of his, empirical and so on, and that's my basic difference with him. And precisely Colin Robinson and some other people talking with him recently confirmed this to me. His idea is, today, the cynicism of those in power is so open that we don't need any critique of ideology where you read symptomatically between the lines. Everything is cynically, openly admitted. We just have to bring out the facts to the people, like this and this companies profited in Iraq and so on and so on. Here I violently disagree. First, more than ever today, our daily life is ideology. How can you doubt ideology where recently, I think, Paul Krugman published a relatively good text where he demonstrated how all this idea of austerity, this is not even good bourgeois economic theory. This is a kind of a primordial, common sense, magical thinking when you confront a crisis. Oh, we must have done something wrong, we spent too much, so let's economize, and so on and so on. And my second point, cynicists are those who are most prone to fall into illusions. Cynicists are not people who see things the way they really are and so on. Think about 2008 and ongoing financial crisis. It was not cooked up by some crazy welfare state social democrats who were spending too much. The crisis exploded because of activity of those utter cynicists who precisely thought, screw human rights, screw dignity, all that matters, and so on and so on. So, so it's this problem of is telling the facts enough? I claim emphatically more than ever no today. As to popularity, I get a little bit annoyed with this idea that we with our cheap sophisms are really hegemonic in humanities. Are people crazy? I mean, we are always marginal. You know what is for me real academic hegemony? It's brutal. Who can get academic posts? Who can get grants, foundations, and so on? We are totally marginalized here. I mean, look at my position, but you are a megastar in the United States. Well, I would like to be, because I like power to brutally use it. But I'm far from that. I react so anxiously to this because a couple of days ago, I got a letter from a friend in the United States for whom I wrote a letter of recommendation, and he told me I didn't get the job, not in spite of your letter, but because of your letter. He had a spy in the committee, and this spy told him, you almost got it, but then somebody says, oh, if Zizek recommends him, it must be something terribly wrong with him. So I claim that all this, how popular we are, it's really a mask of what? of, remember, the large majority of academia are these gray, either cognitivists or historians of, you don't see them, but they are the power. They are the power. On the other hand, why are then they in power worried? Because, you know, don't exaggerate this pseudo-leftist paranoiac idea of we can all be recuperated and so on and so on. No, I still quite naively believe in the efficiency of theoretical thinking. It's not as simple to recuperate everything we do. You know, there are different strategies how to contain us. I must say that I maybe am not innocent in this, because people like to say about me, oh, go to listen to him, he is amusing clown, blah, blah, blah. This is another way to say don't take it seriously. But this is one of the strategies. You know, there are so many strategies to counteract, and the proof that we are not so impotent as innocent is how, did you notice how against you now and against me, this old line of, oh, these are crazy, half clownish marginals, imperceptibly is more and more combined with the opposite line. We are dangerous. We advocate violence. We are preparing a new Holocaust or whatever. This is deeply symptomatic. This mixture of we are powerless, innocent clowns to these guys are really dangerous, preparing a new terror and so on. Of course, my heart is with the second position, but that's another story. Thank you. Sorry, one very short. Laura, no, very short. Yeah. I would like so much. I'm so sad that we don't have time today, because I'm dying to ask you a couple of questions with a great pleasure that today will not have time to answer. Like, what about other melodramas? Nazi, White Harlan, Opfergang. What about communist melodramas? Stalinist, like, did you see Die Legende von Paul und Paula? The most popular East German film.
Next year.